I'm honored to hand this over to Norm. He's been dutifully attending all one of these workshops to do the same presentation, so I hand it over to you, sir.
Thanks, Dave. Set that there. Grab the remote. I think we're ready to go. I think I know almost everyone in the room here, but if you don't know me, I'm the Executive Director of the Monterey County Farm Bureau, and I've been here going on almost 14 years. And my second day on the job here was a big water discussion and going into the complexities of not only the flow and how we have water here and the uses that we do with that water, but also the quality of that water. And after that meeting, I thought, what have I gotten into? So it's been an education since then, and obviously being involved in Farm Bureau, that's everything from A to Z, artichokes to zucchini and everything in between, including animals. Agriculture covers a lot here, 150 different crops every year, a value of $4.6 billion in 2022. So there's a lot in our intensive agricultural sector here to consider when we talk about water use. My involvement in the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act actually started in the beginning as it was adopted in 2015. We met in a small room in the city of Salinas offices, a small group of us, to try and figure out how are we going to form a groundwater sustainability agency and what does that mean for our community. And I think we came together very well, forming a Joint Powers Authority, or JPA, for the Groundwater Sustainability Agency that we now have. And we made it very nimble. We made it very reactive to what we need to do and move this process forward. And I think that's testified in the fact that we have 6 adopted plans from the various different subbasins, as well as moving through a lot of the different issues. I was asked to really talk about what agriculture has done and what we're doing with efficiency of water use and what the historical perspective of that is. And so I will start moving by agricultural water use. What have we done in the last quarter century to improve water efficiency and irrigation water use here? And these numbers come from our Water Resource Agency. They, as was noted, they've been collecting this data since the mid-1990s. It's fairly reliable data. It's something that is each year achieved at a 98% or higher level of reporting, so it's very solid data, and it really gives us some good trends to look at. While this data is really for the greater Salinas Valley area, not necessarily completely within the boundaries of the basin, the approximations really fit here on how we're doing this. So as you can see from the slide here, in 1996, we were extracting about 560,000 acre-feet of water, and in 2022, it was 447,000. So that's a reduction of 20% of use of agricultural irrigation water, or 115,000 acre-feet in that 25-year period, or 26-year period. Sorry, tripping on the cord. So that's at the same time, not only did we increase yields by better agronomics and other things that come into factor here, and we'll go through some slides showing what we are doing there in water efficiency and how we're doing that in the fields, but also we expanded our irrigated acres by 5% in that quarter century. So more land that we're irrigating, but we're using less to produce more. So how did we get there? What did we do to really have that 20% reduction in irrigation water use? And part of it is the increased use of better agronomics and how we grow our product in the fields, responding efficiently to the cost of extracting that water. As we all know, electric rates continue to go up, and as of yesterday at the CPUC, they're going up again, so watch out. And then the use of technology. That's really a factor here that we are now using more on a broad basis throughout the basin, and really helping to understand not only how we water, but when we water. So let's talk a little bit about what agriculture is doing in the field and how we got there to have that 20% reduction. And we'll start with the obvious one, micro-irrigation or drip irrigation. As everyone knows, it's something that's delivering water directly to the root zone of the plant itself, rather than a broader perspective of how that water is placed on a field. And it's fully used on 82% of our crop fields at this point. We will probably never get to 100% with micro-irrigation because there are just some crops that cannot be grown that way. And so we'll have to figure out what we're going to do with that other 18%. But the point being is that we have a wide adoption on this right now. And that's an investment that all farming operations have made to improve efficiency. It maximizes irrigation water, minimizes evaporation and runoff. And I think one of the things that we should be noting here too is that it creates a whole different set of values that we have to consider when we're using single-use drip tape, that we have to recycle it, that we have to do other things in the field. So again, it becomes quite an investment, but you can see it's widely adopted at this point. We're moving more into precision irrigation practices, the use of soil moisture sensors, weather stations to really indicate what is happening in the weather that might influence when irrigation should be used, and then computerized irrigation cycles, applying water when the plant is most receptive to receive that water or utilize that water. That's a big change in what we used to do rather than doing this. So we're really looking at various different ways that we can use all this data, all this input to maximize the efficiency there. Compost use and mulching. This is something that is now becoming a little bit more of an incentive in some of our regulatory programs. Composting is more widely used in vineyards at this point, but it's really difficult to do in field crops and intensive agriculture. So we're seeing how we can make that work and what we can do in our fields to improve the soil health by using composting or mulching to reduce evaporation, reduce runoff, and retain more moisture in the soil, and then, of course, lowering the irrigation needs that are of the crops that are in the field at that point. So as I said, we're looking at regulatory incentives to help improve that, working with composters, trying to figure out what's the best mix or what is the best type of compost or mulching that can be used in some of the different crops. And then also now looking at biochar and how that can improve a lot of what we're doing in our soils, and particularly in the vineyard areas. Crop selection and rotation, we are seeing more developments in that area related to particular varieties that are more less water intensive, They have increased drought tolerance or require less irrigation water to achieve the same type of yield that prior varieties may have. And our heavy crop rotation also helps with soil health. There's a lot of benefits to rotating from berries to leafy greens to vegetable crops and making sure that the soil is maintaining a healthy balance for all those different crops. But it's really coming to diversifying what we do in agriculture and making sure that when we're using water, we're using it most sustainably, but also in the characterization of different crop selection and rotation, making sure that those varieties are suitable for what we're doing here. Conservation tillage, this is something that has been, I wouldn't say experimented, but is being looked at and used more widely here. A lot of different farms are experimenting with how they can use no-till or low-till in some of the crops that they're producing here. Improves soil moisture retention, minimizes the soil disturbance itself. We all know that we live in a wind tunnel here in the Salinas Valley, and the less dust we have, the better we are. And then scaling regenerative techniques that are currently being used in many different crops, and how do we figure out how to do that here in an intensive agricultural setting to maintain not only the soil health, the plant varieties yield that we need to have for the marketplace, but as well as what we can do for the environment and how that improves our irrigation efficiency also. So we're doing a lot of water recycling and reclamation of water systems right now. This has really become a huge discussion topic, I guess is the best way to put it, in not only here in our local area in Monterey County, but across the state. How can we reuse water and reclaim water for different uses, not only just consumptive for residential and commercial, but now also for irrigation. We're fortunate that we have the CSIP, or Castroville Seawater Intrusion Project, that has been in effect now for over 20 years. Capitalizing on using reclaimed water in 12,000 acres in the coastal zone, thus reducing the reliance on groundwater in that particular area. And that is the area where we have the seawater intrusion. Need to make sure that we are not continuing to enhance that particular issue by increasing the boundary acres of that seawater line at this point. And as you saw on the chart that Abby showed earlier, we have dramatically slowed that, but we haven't stopped it, and we need to figure out how we're going to reverse that. That is part of this whole plan for the next 20 years of how we get there. There's also an opportunity to expand that project for another roughly 12,000 acres. That was part of phase 2 when the project was originally proposed. And we need to look and see how we can do that to, again, reduce the reliance on groundwater in the coastal zone, but also make sure that we're enhancing the use of reclaimed water as much as we can, because reclaimed water for agriculture is what we call tertiary, is not necessarily cleansed all the way to drinking water quality, and so it's a little bit less expensive in a process to do. I think one of the points that we should make here is that there's a lot of competition for reclaimed water now too. We have the Monterey Peninsula that is looking at expanding the the Pure Water Monterey project, which will deliver approximately 4,000 acre feet of drinking water to the Monterey Peninsula. That's water that's essentially coming from the Salinas Valley that they are recycling, reclaiming, and moving to a different area. So there's going to be a lot of competition for this reclaimed water as we move forward. Irrigation water management, of course, is part of all of this. We're seeing more computerized scheduling of that and computer-controlled irrigation cycles, informing our decisions on when to irrigate based on soil moisture, climate fluctuations, temperature, and of course, wind here in the Salinas Valley. Technologies are always evolving here. There's multiple companies looking at various different irrigation technology efficiencies. A lot of them are working through the Innovation Center in Salinas. A lot of them are working individually with farms here. There's a lot of opportunities that we can look to, particularly for items that they're doing in places where they have scarce water, like Israel and some other places where they have managed this a whole lot better than other areas. But the point being here is that the technology is constantly evolving. We're going to see more and more technology inserting itself, so to speak, into agronomical practices as well as irrigation. One of the things that we will have to, as part of this process, discuss is advanced metering infrastructure, or AMI. This is something that is coming, and I think that the State Water Board, as well as the Department of Water Resources, are going to start integrating this more into their requirements for the groundwater sustainability plans as they move forward with their 5-year updates. We're going to hear more about how this is going to have to be implemented in agriculture and what that means. And that is real-time data. Let's not kid ourselves. That is real-time data of extractions and water use, and that's going to be a big game changer. Genetic engineering touched a little bit on this related to crop varieties, but we're again looking at varieties that utilize less water, that can be grown in a quicker fashion without as much irrigation need. meaning they achieve yield faster. Disease resistance is important. It makes no sense to grow a crop and lose it to a disease. That's a waste of water. That is not using water efficiently. So we need to figure out some of these disease issues and really start working towards the genetics of solving INSV and some of the molds that we currently are dealing with. And also, part of this is improved shelf life. I think our retailers are looking constantly at shelf life and how long the product lasts in their stores and the expiration dates that are put on those products. How do we change that and improve that while at the same time we're using less water at harvest? Soil biodiversity, this is including items such as cover cropping, composting, organic quality enhancements to make sure that we're using our soils as best we can. That's part of the rotation of the different crops that we use here to enhance our soils. But really to look at how we can increase soils' water holding capacity. That's a big challenge, I think. And then reducing those cycles for irrigation. But one of the big points here is that we've been growing crops here for the last 160 years. We must be doing something right if we continue to improve our yields, improve our agronomics, improve the quality of the product that we're growing. So obviously we're very blessed to have climate, soil, and water in this particular area that allows us to do this almost 12 months of the year for 160 years now. And finally, government incentives. We're finally seeing some of the regulatory agencies waking up to providing that carrot, the incentives in some of their regulatory programs for composting, cover cropping, less tillage, those types of things. We want to integrate that more into the process and make sure that that is really an incentive for growers to start adopting and moving forward with them. We're seeing a lot in water-saving technologies. There's a lot of grants that are available, not only from the state, but the feds on water efficiency, improving water delivery on farms. But we're already at 82% with our micro-irrigation and other things that we're doing here. That bite is probably going to be a little harder for us to achieve and be that much more costly as we go through it. Regulatory incentives are included in some of the, well, we're trying to include in the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program. There are some in there now, but we want to expand that as much as we can. Then we have the Healthy Soils, the SWEEP and farmer programs that offer funding and grants for improvement in equipment, as well as conversion to electric on a lot of equipment. And then we're constantly encouraging improvement. I think that's one of the things I learned when I first came here 14 years ago, is that this is a community of early adopters. If it's financially feasible and can be done practically on the farm, someone will adopt it and make it a success story. So I took all of those last 10 slides that we just went through and kind of rated them as to high adoption, moderate adoption, and low adoption here in the Salinas Valley Basin, and where we're at and where the opportunities are for improvement as we consider moving through this process. You can see there high adoption on drip irrigation, crop selection, rotation, water recycling, irrigation, water management, and biodiversity. Moderate on precision agricultural practices, composting and mulching, government incentives, all things that we still need to get a little bit better grasp on and figure out, but also looking at the low adoption areas of conservation tillage and genetic engineering. And that involves research, involves trials in the field, involves a lot of different things. And so there's a lot that we can still consider doing yet, even though we've achieved quite a bit in the last quarter century. So with that, I will stop and ask if there are any questions. A lot of this information is also available on our website if you want to look at Monterey County Farm Bureau's website. But water is obviously something that's extremely critical to the agricultural community, and I think we're doing a great job to this point of making sure that we're using it as efficiently as we can, but there's more to come.
All right, thank you. Again, Norm's volunteering himself to do this 5 times in a row, and our colleagues from Cal Water are too. So he could do this in his sleep now.
I do
Are there?
do it
Yeah, he
in
does.
sleep.
Yes. Are there any other questions? If there are, just go ahead and raise them up, and colleagues of mine will go ahead and grab them, or I'll bring the mic to you if we have. All right. How does AMI affect the Monterey County Water Resources Association ordinance regarding flexibility with types of flow meters?
Well, I think part of that is yet to be determined. AMI is going to be an expensive process to implement here with as many wells as that we have, and how we go about doing that without bankrupting the community, so to speak, is going to be a big challenge. Flow meters are great, and I think they give us a lot of information there, but it's not real time. And I think the difference here is that when we look forward with what DPR and the State Water Board are going to be looking for in their plans, is they're going to want real-time data. That's where we're going with all of this. If anyone has any doubt about it, I think it's going to happen. I'm sorry?
I'm gonna. So Water Resources Agency and SCBGSA, we're working right now very closely together, updating that ordinance. It does specify, there's a lot of detail in there. What we're envisioning is to have an ordinance that is more evergreen, gives some foundational things, but then leaves some room for technology is changing, world is changing, climate is changing, that we can have another document or a series of documents that are more of a policy level that will then help us to move more swiftly from this is not working anymore, we need to move to a different level of, would it be technology, would it be method, would it be device, how we collect data, because that's the first step of demand management, is you can't manage what you don't know, what you don't have. So data is very, very crucial, and having accurate data and timely data, we need to get there. So there's gonna be some changes coming to that ordinance.
And I'll add public data. I think that's where this is going. This is all going to be in the public domain. So I think we all need to be prepared. I keep saying that the train is leaving the station. We got to figure out how we get on it and how we're going to manage it so that it doesn't go out of control.
Okay, next question. If ag isn't or doesn't use all available tertiary water produced, should the peninsula get access to it before it goes to the outfall? And if not, why not?
Well, the short answer to that question is yes, but it's a lot more complicated than just saying yes. There's a lot of different agreements for who gets what water and what the sources of that reclaimed water are. And that's what we're trying to work through at this point, is to determine who gets what water and how we can manage all of that for all the different needs that we have. There is, of course, the human right to drinking water, and that will play into this at some point, but we also have the expansion of CSIP that we want to do, plus optimization of that system. It's now 25 years old. It needs some updates. It needs to be optimized so that we can really pressurize it best and work more water through that system, and again, reduce reliance on groundwater. So a lot of moving parts here, but the short answer is yes, we do not want to put anything into that outfall, sending it out into the bay. So we got to figure out how we do that. Part of it may include additional storage. Where are we going to put that water until we can use it? So I think there are a lot of different dynamics that are going on with that. I could actually go on for a day about that one.
That'll be the next 5 workshops. Yeah. So, Ian?
What is the cost and the structure for drip tape recycling these days? Because I moved down here from northern San Joaquin Valley up by the Delta, and the farm I worked for up there, the last time we looked into it, it was, at least for our area up there, the state was paying somebody outside of Turlock to bundle it all up and send it to the Midwest, and none of that was actually happening in California. So I'm curious about that.
Well, another topic I could spend hours on. We have gone through various different iterations of plastic recycling here. We had, at one time, we had a plant in Firestone that was accepting agricultural waste, and for some reason or other, I think part of it pandemic induced, it just wasn't working financially for them. I think we have a lot of opportunities. I see and get information on new plastic recycling efforts that are going on. There's one going on in Sonoma right now that they want to bring down here, but it's fairly limited in scope, and it doesn't necessarily fit exactly what we do in agriculture here. So that is something we need to figure out. It's not useful to send all what we do here to Fresno and then ship it back east for further recycling. So that is something that we're working on. We do have a couple of companies that are now offering to pick up plastic recycling, but the problem there is it can't have dirt. It has to be clean. And they're going to have to figure out that paradigm so that it makes it work for agriculture. But it is something that we're working on, particularly with the Strawberry Commission. They're looking at their plastic packaging and how they can reduce the reliance on plastics there so that there's less going into the recycling stream. I think part of this is political too. We have offshored a lot of this recycling, unfortunately, and now we're finding that areas like China and others don't want to take our plastic. So it's an equation that has many different facets to it, and I think really politically California needs to get off their butt and make it easier to recycle plastics here. And if that requires some sort of government intervention financially to get that kicked off, I think we need to put our money where our mouth is on that one. Eric.
Just really quickly on that, following up on the drip tape. A lot of the drip tape that we're using right now is single-use drip tape from Netafim, and it is collected back in the field, goes to Fresno, is made into new drip tape, and shows up a year later for us to use again.
Correct. Thank you.
Other questions? We'll move on to Anthony and the urban side of things, but any last questions for Norm? All right, well, thank you
All right,
again,
thank you.
Norm. Awesome.